Have you ever felt caught between two worlds? Whether by choice or by force, we often enter into groups, cliques, or tribes. As you know, one of the most popular questions you ask somebody from their El Paso is, what high school did you go to? And I think I have always chosen to be between worlds, sometimes confused, oftentimes confusing others, but happy to float back and forth. But do we have to make a choice to be in one world, to land in one space? We as a city and as a region have a hard time figuring out who we are. Well, are we part of Texas? Well, East Texas doesn't really think we exist. And are we part of New Mexico? Well, we'd be the biggest city in that state, and I'm pretty sure we'd freak out Santa Fe. And are we part of northern Mexico? Well, let's be honest, I think we're a bunch of poachers with bad manners, and it is what it is. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, to an Argentine father and a mother born in France, to a Holocaust survivor from Czechoslovakia, who was rescued from a labor camp by my grandfather, a Roman Catholic Spaniard named Pedro Campello, who I'm named after. In other words, I'm a mutt. And like so many of my cohort, I decided to leave El Paso as soon as I could graduate from high school, eventually settling into New York to pursue a career in photography. Somewhere in the first year I was in New York, I went with a friend on a road trip through the Southwest. And when I landed in El Paso, I went to the synagogue to visit the rabbi and some friends I hadn't seen in years. As I sat there in the chapel, doing whatever it is when you sit in a chapel in the synagogue, I noticed some new faces in the crowd. After services, I began to talk with the rabbi and others, and was introduced to a group of crypto Jews from New Mexico, from Ruidoso. Crypto Jews, Anusim, Conversos, these are terms used to describe Spanish Jews who were forced to convert to Catholicism during the Spanish Inquisition. Many of these families fled to New Spain, fleeing to the furthest fringes of the Spanish Empire, places like the Caribbean and along the Camino Real Road to practice a religion in secret. I was here at synagogue talking to folks who believed they were descendants of hidden Spanish Jews and were returning to Judaism. They were taking baby steps and coming out to a Jewish identity, an identity I had taken for granted. I had an aha moment, and I remembered a quote a professor said, that if you don't like where you are, you can shoot your way out. And so starting a portrait, that's the aha moment right there. That was my apartment in New York. I know, right? And so starting this portrait project felt like the right thing to do. But see, this is more than just a portrait project. This is more than just creating a body of work. This is a portrait project about my place, about growing up in El Paso, both Jewish and Latino, and trying to negotiate those identities in a place which is Roman Catholic in time and place. I knew I had to document this movement, and so I started coming back every year. I came back to this project knowing I was creating a body of work that felt real. And this is a story about people on the border that didn't revolve around drug dealing or death, or destruction or disappearance. Their story was a story of joy, of finding comfort in one's own skin, on one's own terms. And then I had to get comfortable in my own. The thing is I started getting work in New York City, but I wasn't completely satisfied. The work I was getting was often humorous and lighthearted, as you can see of this beautiful portrait of Corey Feldman. It was fun, but I was a little hectic and unfocused. And I wanted to speak a new language and define myself as an artist. This is Zach Galifianakis. So I went back to graduate school to learn photography and video. And being in school exposed me to a lot of work and a lot of new ideas. Some good, some not so much. And when it came time for the thesis, the border called home once again, and I wanted to use that opportunity to write a love letter to the place that raised me at a time of so much hurt. The El Paso Transnational Trolley Project was an ad campaign for a streetcar to open up again between Juarez and El Paso once again. There used to be a streetcar here that ran from 1902 to 1974, and at its height, it had over 500 trips a day between the two cities. I used the language of advertising because I wanted to challenge people in a way that was unsettling, in a way that different forms of public art could do. And I wanted to blur the borders between guerrilla advertising and street art, conceptual art and performance art, and documentary photo practice. I wanted to destroy the border between these genres, and history and fiction, and art and identity. I wanted to make something new that could spark conversations and dialogue about what it meant to be from here. You see, I think it's vitally important to imagine a better future between the two cities. And if you can't imagine a better future, you can't have one. And this reminded me when I was sitting in my house crying at 15 when Yitzhak Rubin, Prime Minister of Israel, was killed by a religious extremist. He gave people hope for a peaceful future and for change in the region. And oftentimes I think of what's going on there, and I think that neither side can literally imagine what peace looks like anymore. I thought images of symbols of El Paso and Juarez relationship would be a great way to show ourselves here what our past and what our values look like, and hopefully could look like again. And hopefully begin a conversation about how we should move forward as a community. The project was not just about imagination, but also about challenging people's perceptions about what the border was about and how people view our story. And in 2010, during the height of the violence with Juarez, and really forever, people from the outside have been trying to define us and demonize us. There seems to be one narrative of the border. And so for my thesis, I decided to take the chance to show what it meant to be from here. And as an artist, those things that define us, that symbolize the ideals of our community, are our trolleys and our bridges. Those things that allow us to cross over back and forth, to go and to come back. You see, El Paso and Juarez have always had this gift. And the gift that they had was each other. And the way we used to share ourselves was through a trolley. Well, not just through our trolleys, but our bridges too. And our songs and our languages, our food and our hearts, and our beautiful, beautiful sunsets. And this was a different vision of the border than what you see on the evening news. To be from El Paso or to be from Juarez means to be able to cross. The same way border crossing defines us as a community. The same way jazz is New Orleans and New York has the Yankees. El Paso has Juarez and Juarez has El Paso. And from the richest of the rich to the poorest of the poor, we all have different reasons for wanting to cross. And even with the cartel violence and the post-9/11 national security state, we should always insist that we have ways to cross. And so I came home. My father loves me right now. I came home to challenge those perceptions and representations of the border. He loves me, right? You can tell he loves me. To see how far this project could go. That's why I came home. The evening I landed in El Paso, I started taking portraits. Some with black backdrops, and other ones with white. In the first 2 months I came back, working with a few friends, I began to photograph these simple portraits in Juarez, El Paso, and Las Cruces. These were made into a mosaic of, well, you guessed it, a trolley. Over 2,000 portraits in all were made, a time capsule of the region in 2011, when some of the worst violence was occurring as a symbol of hope. These faces were our faces here on the border, and I wanted to show ourselves off rather than someone tell us what we look like and act like. The final border breach with the El Paso Transnational Trolley Project was the wall between politics and art. In February 2012, the project turned into a real grassroots campaign when we started collecting not portraits but signatures this time, trying to save those vintage streetcars from dying in the desert. We secured over 1,000 signatures from citizens from across the city, and that enabled a push from our local city representatives to get an intra-city streetcar line off the ground, from a sketch in 2010 to a shovel-ready plan in 2013. And what would it mean for these trolleys to come back? Well, forget economic development, forget transit-oriented development, because those things are important, but these trolleys go a lot deeper than that. These streetcars coming back would be a visual symbol of our shared past with Ciudad Juarez at a time where border crossing was different. And these streetcars would be a clear symbol to any visitor coming to our city that we respected ourselves enough to reclaim our history and celebrate it once again. Being back in El Paso has made me more aware of how I process and view my own work. In the end, I was most comfortable as an artist with blurring the borders between things, because it is a reflection of my own mix-up identity as well as the place that raised me, the El Paso del Norte region. As I came back to El Paso, opportunities arose as an artist that differed than what I had in New York. Through the mix of public and private monies, the sacred and the secular, I returned to that body of work I created about crypto Jews so many years ago. And I created this installation not just through photography, but through food. And not just any kind of food, kosher gourmet tacos. Don't think this project could have happened anywhere else outside of El Paso, and I'm thankful for the opportunities that arose here through the city of El Paso's art project, as well as B'nai Zion Synagogue and others. And food is something that speaks to many cultures in many different ways. It is a language of love, but food can also be a weapon. And during the Spanish Inquisition, new Christians were forced to eat swine to the bone to show how not Jewish they were. They were named marranos. And by making kosher tacos, I was hoping to provide a symbol of culinary resistance, reclaiming a Jewish place in Hispanic and Spanish history. And doing it in El Paso along the Camino Real, I was hoping to educate folks on a past maybe uncovered. The menus themselves blurred these borders that I was so fond of, being not only a menu, but a timeline of the Spanish Inquisition, as well as lists of Spanish Jewish last names as well. And so for me to feel comfortable in creating and understanding myself, I looked home and came home. And for a place that is constantly struggling to define itself, it's vitally important to understand our own history, or many histories here, and to broaden that appreciation of one's cultural roots, however hidden, revealed. And through a celebration and conversation about our past, whether through crypto Jews, international transportation systems, or kosher tacos, we here on the border can love ourselves and show our true selves off, not only to the rest of the outside world, but more importantly to each other, here in a place of two cities and one heart. To be from here is to be comfortable in that place in between. And other places mix things up too. But in El Paso and Juarez, it's as if that's what we're supposed to do to be alive here. Living in between space in our own little place, happy and free to be ourselves, to make our own tacos with whatever ingredients we choose. And if you guys are hungry, I will be serving some kosher tacos for you. Thank you very much.